She threw the champagne flute straight into her brother's face. Glass shattered across the marble floor, droplets of golden liquid splattered his pristine tuxedo, and every guest froze, as if trapped inside someone else's tragedy. "You set fire to her car," Emily Carter said, her voice calm, icy. "You knew she was inside." Jason wiped his cheek with the back of his hand, ignoring the cut. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't even afraid. They were hollow. "If I'd wanted her to burn," he said, "she would have burned. I just wanted you to know I can reach everything you love." It wasn't the first blow. And it wouldn't be the last. But in that instant, Emily stopped pretending things could be fixed. Revenge was no longer an option. It had become a necessity. Their father, Arthur Carter, died in May, in the rain, in his study, clutching a photograph of his wife, the woman who'd left them 20 years earlier. The doctors called it a heart attack. But Emily knew the truth. He died of disappointment. He'd spent his life believing in family, not the brand, not the legacy, not the billions his logistics empire generated each year. He believed his children, Emily and Jason, would one day stand shoulder to shoulder and carry the company forward. But Jason had shown, since the age of 13, only one gift: the talent for spending what others earned. Emily, by contrast, had worked in her father's office every summer since she was 15, first in archives, then accounting, and by 26, on the board of directors. She knew every contract, every shipping manifest, every risk in the supply chain from Miami to Seattle. When Arthur summoned them both a week before his death, he was brutally honest, as always. "Everything I've built goes to you, Emily. Jason gets an annual allowance, as long as he stays out of operations. If he sues, he gets $1. Nothing more." Jason slammed the door so hard the frames on the wall trembled. Emily stayed. She didn't speak. She just held her father's hand, and knew he hadn't done it out of hatred for his son, but out of love for the company. He simply knew Jason too well. The first 3 months after the funeral were quiet. Jason vanished: Miami, then Aspen, then London. Emily didn't look for him. She signed documents, ran meetings, shut down loss-making divisions her brother had kept alive for image. But one morning, her assistant brought an envelope with no return address. Inside, a photograph. It showed her best friend, Sarah, standing outside her home. Painted in red on the sidewalk, accomplice to a thief. Emily went cold. Sarah wasn't family. She wasn't an heir. She was the only person who'd held Emily the night after the funeral, when she finally let herself sob, alone, broken, and utterly responsible for everything. That was the moment Emily realized he won't stop. She hired a private investigator, not to sue, not to defend herself, but to find his weakness. 2 weeks later, the report arrived. Jason was living on credit lines, having pawned everything he could: the Patek Philippe, the yacht he'd bought at 25. He owed money to casinos, private lenders, even his old tennis coach. But the real danger? He'd started calling his father's old partners, telling them Emily had pushed him out, that she was unstable, that Arthur wasn't lucid when he signed the will. He was laying the groundwork to contest it. Emily smiled. Let him play. She'd hand him the rope herself. A month later, she called him. "I want you to come home," she said. He laughed. "You're joking." "No. You're my brother. I won't let you become a laughingstock." Live in the West Wing: staff, meals, car, just like before. He moved back in 2 days later. She hosted a dinner, just the two of them, candlelit, in the dining room where Arthur once hosted the CEO of Transglobal Freight in 1999. "I don't forgive you," she said, pouring wine. "But I believe you can change." He stared at her like she was a stranger. But he nodded. He didn't know every phone in his room had a new SIM card routed through her surveillance system. That every email he sent was scanned. That his new lawyer had been on her payroll since 2019. The first real strike was silent. 6 weeks after his return, Jason landed a consulting role at an exclusive investment club. $220,000 a year, plus bonuses. He started wearing Tom Ford suits, posting new watches on Instagram, inviting old friends to dinners at his sister's estate. Emily waited. One day, she accidentally left a printout on the kitchen table, a screenshot of his message to one of Arthur's oldest partners. "She's a manipulator." The will can be challenged. I have witnesses, he was doped up on morphine. She said nothing, just walked away. The next day, Jason lost his job. The partner, Arthur's college friend, sent Emily a note of apology and a copy of Jason's termination letter for defamation and ethical misconduct. Jason stormed into her study, furious. "You set me up." "I didn't do a thing," she replied. "You handed them the weapon yourself." He punched the wall, then locked himself in his room for 2 days. The second strike was subtler. Emily began inviting people Jason cared about, old school friends, ex-girlfriends, even his former golf coach, to intimate dinners. She never spoke ill of him, just dropped quiet regrets. "He's brilliant, but terrified of responsibility. He still can't accept that Dad didn't trust him. I worry he'll start drinking again." The whispers spread. Guesses became facts. Within a month, his fiancée called off their engagement. "I won't be part of this war," she texted. His friends stopped answering calls. His name vanished from guest lists at private parties. He became invisible. By winter, he was drinking. Not like in college, wild fun with cocktails and laughter. Now he drank alone. Nights on the terrace, staring at the sound. Emily watched from her third-floor office window. She felt no pity, only cold satisfaction. Because she remembered being 14. She'd been preparing for a National Economics Olympiad, 6 hours a day of research, models, presentations. Jason was 16. He knew how much it meant to her. The night before her final pitch, he stole her laptop. Said it was a joke. She found it the next morning, submerged in the pool, ruined. She lost. Her father had said then, "Life isn't fair. Learn to live with it." Now she was teaching him. In spring, he tried to steal. Not money. Not jewels. He entered their father's safe, the one hidden behind the painting in the study. Inside lay the original will, a few stock certificates, and their mother's wedding ring. He knew the code. Arthur had taught them both. But Emily had changed the lock and installed motion sensors. When he opened the safe, the alarm triggered. Security didn't come. Instead, a text appeared on his phone. "You think I'd keep the will in the house? It's in a vault in Chicago. And your actions are being recorded. Ask yourself, is it worth it?" He sank to the floor and cried. For the first time in 20 years. That summer, she made her final move. She convened a family council, technically optional, but ritually significant. Her uncle, aunt, a cousin, the family lawyer, and Arthur's oldest friend, a former governor, all attended. Emily announced, "I'm offering Jason a lump sum of $2 million. In exchange, he signs a document waiving all claims to the inheritance." Jason sat in silence. "Is that all you've got?" he finally asked. "It's all you've earned," she replied. He wavered for a week, then signed. He never read the full contract. Buried in Clause 14 was a penalty if he ever challenged the will, spoke about the Carters to the press, or used the family name for commercial gain. He'd owe a $10 million fine. The lawyer confirmed it was airtight. The money hit his account the next day. By fall, he was gone. He bought a house in Tucson, married a woman who knew nothing of his past. A year later, they had a son. Emily learned of it through social media. She didn't message, didn't congratulate. But on the anniversary of their father's death, a package arrived, no return address. Inside, her childhood bracelet. The one she'd lost in the park at 10. Jason had claimed he threw it away. Now it rested on a velvet cushion with a note. "Sorry I was a monster. You were right all along." She placed it in the safe, next to her mother's ring. 2 years passed. Emily expanded the business into Europe. Sold a stake, but kept control. Bought an island off the coast of Maine, not for herself, but for a foundation building schools in Africa. One evening, on the terrace, she wondered, had it been worth it? Revenge hadn't brought back her father. Hadn't restored her childhood. Hadn't erased the pain. But it had restored balance. In their world, private jets, black card clubs, names that echoed in Forbes, justice doesn't arrive on its own. It must be carved, like a diamond from stone. Sometimes with a blade. Sometimes with your own hands. She finished her wine and stared at the stars. The house was silent. So silent, she could hear her own heartbeat. Alive. Whole. Free. And that was enough.